Hey everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I have quite a few journals that I have just listed on my website, abitofbirdsong.com. The first one is called the Old Quilt for obvious reasons. Each one of these journals is going to have a paper tag that's been distressed and it's got the name of the journal on it. There is a vintage charm on the outside of this one. It is a crochet covered bead. You can see the Old Quilt on the outside, which, by the way, I washed before I used it. There is some vintage fabric on the inside from a Ralph Lauren sheet. That has been washed. I love the roses. There are pockets on the inside, front and back covers. There's my Birdsong stamp. This is one of the art journals with 9 signatures. Each signature has 2 pages that have been sewn to fabric strips, and then the strips have been sewn into the cover. So this one's pretty easy to flip through. I love art journals that are built this way. This paper's very sturdy, will hold up to a lot. Again, 9 signatures. Each signature has got 2 pieces of watercolor paper. So that's 18 pieces. 1, 2, so that's 18 pieces. 36 if you count front and back. That's the first journal. The next journal is called Bohemian Distress, and again, that's probably pretty obvious. Well, especially when we get inside. The cover is a piece of fabric from a Bohemian style spread that had the little pieces of mirror embedded into it. It does have some wear, as you can tell. It wasn't so easy to sew around some of these mirrors. There's a vintage piece of fabric on the front that's black velvet and lace, and it's got the little sparkles in it. That was not so easy to sew around either, but I did it. Then there are 2 different signatures here, and that makes, 4 places to tie a bead on the outside. There are 4 beads. 3 of these are glass. One, I'm not sure what it is, but it definitely tied in with the color and the theme. These are tied really loosely in case you want to take those off and replace them with something else. There's the handmade tag that says Bohemian Distress. That's put up here with a safety pin. You can take that off. Inside, front and back pocket with this satiny fabric that matches the theme. Once we get inside, you can see this is a combination of beautiful distressed paper. You can see the little sketches and places where I tested my brush. This is distressed paper from my art desk with a combination of watercolor paper, new watercolor paper. So there's a lot of fun space in here to work, and you're going to have, some pages that are already distressed, and you can just add to those. That's a really fun way to work. So each one of these signatures has got 6 folded pages or 12 pages, making 24 or 48 if you count every single page front and back. There's my stamp on the back, and that is that one. The next one, I love this one. Okay, this has got a really fun piece of elastic from the Ralph Lauren sheet. I left a skirt on it so that the elastic's not just going to pop out of that hem there. And there are some artificial flowers on that. This is called Denim Trip. Mostly because of these bright, beautiful colors. It made me think of the 70s. And then, of course, the cover is denim. There are 3 beautiful glass beads on the outside, an owl, and another glass bead, and another one. There's a strip from a jacket that I cut up. I love this fabric. I sewed it on in a way that you can still get things under these little areas. There are 2 safety pins and the handmade tag. And then when you open this one up, it is sort of a trifold. It is a trifold, but okay, it's a trifold. There is a denim pocket in the front, a little pocket in the back from some fabric. There's my Birdsong stamp. And then the pages are an eclectic mix of just all different weights and types of paper. Some paper that's already been distressed. There's one of the pieces that has the perforated strip across the top. Beautiful scrapbook paper. There's a piece of fancy paper. You can see the fibers in it and little bits of paint from the art desk. There's some pretty paper. I hear Jason pulling up on his motorcycle. There's a piece of scrapbook paper, piece of black paper. There's a book page from a vintage art book and more scrapbook paper. There's a piece of a vintage map. All sorts of beautiful paper. And then just going back the other way, let's show you some of the images here. This book page, where is it? So that's got some really pretty interesting birds on it. And then one of these pieces, this one, I think, no, this has the UPC on it. Not sure why companies do that, but that paper is from 2001. And you can see this fun upholstery trim all the way around. This one has 18 sheets that are folded. So that's 36 pages, or, you know, you can do the math and count front and back. And there are also lots more details on my website, and I will link each journal to its respective blog post so that you can see the information. The next one is called World Travel. It's a really fun cover made with fabric pieces that have been sort of quilted together. I could cut that string off. I might just leave it in case you want it there. There's the handmade tag that says World Travel. There's a resin cream colored rose bead and then a couple of glass beads. Again, we've got the little fabric elastic piece that you can put on as a closure. This one has got a beautiful piece of fabric from a scarf from India. You can see all the stitching there. And then again, an eclectic mix of paper. Vintage book pages, vintage map pages, some pages that have been distressed, some pretty vintage paper, book pages. There's some fancy paper with the fibers in it, vintage piece of map, and just all sorts of fun paper to work with. There's a piece of watercolor paper. And then there's the center. That's a big piece of heavy paper from a vintage calendar. This page had a little rip in it, but you can see all the fibers and things in that paper. I just taped it up with some masking tape. There's my stamp on the back, and then you can just see little bits and pieces of fabric. So, you know, going back the other way. This one is similar as far as number of pages of the last one. You can kind of tell where I flipped through that. So there are more details on the blog post for that one. This one is called Rose Number 32. I think it is absolutely beautiful. So you can see it kind of flips over for a closure. It has a beautiful piece of lace snippet trim with this piece of lace that came from my dear friend Mary. This was something that she had included in the wall hanging that she sent to me. So that is on the outside part of that, and there is a large white button on the front that you can wrap that around. There's a combination of just like heavy cotton fabric, the rose fabric from the vintage sheet, and then of course you can see where the number 32 comes from. This again is just an eclectic mix of book pages, distressed pages from my art desk, some handmade paper, printed images, all sorts of vintage book pages. You can see where that came from the inside of a library book. There's a botanical book page, more distressed paper from my art desk. So this is just a lot of fun. I think that had 17 folded pages, 17, 16, something like that. Again, there are exact details on the website. This is a good size for travel. Really pretty. I love the tag. There are 4 fun beads on this trim on the outside, and that tag is on with a safety pin. Here is another small journal. This one's called Journal Number 45. You can probably guess. Similar to the last one, how we got that name. You've got the paper tag and then the beautiful scarf. Another piece of that snippet trim from Mary, 2 glass beads, and there's my stamp. And then just, again, a mix of beautiful vintage book pages, different weights of paper, distressed pages from my work desk where you see me working every day and journaling. Textured paper, wallpaper, just really fun. There's a vintage book page. And then, of course, you know, you're going to have the other side of that in the back. And I love this little closure. This, of course, again, is from the vintage sheet. This was around the edge. And I just left part of the cotton. It left kind of a skirt of fabric so that the elastic stays put and doesn't come out of the hem that it's in. So there is journal number 45. This one, I love this one. This is called Waiting for News. It has the same type of closure. There's the handmade tag. There's a pretty piece of the trim that came from like a really large piece of jewelry that had all of this, the faux crystals. There is a vintage table linen on the outside, and you can see my stamp, 2 pretty beads on the outside. And then when you get on the inside, we've got the pretty rosy fabric. This very first page came from an old book about shipwrecks. And this is a picture of somebody waiting on news from a passenger. I can't remember if it's from the Titanic or the Lusitania, but it's one of the two. And that is just so moving, that image. There are some other pages in here from that book and just different distressed pages from the art desk, some distressed and stained pages from a bird book, some heavy paper, textured paper. There's a botanical page. And, you know, journals like this are so much fun. And, of course, you can see here just on the other side. Again, that's about the same size. It's going to be 16 or 17 folded pages. All the details are on the website. This one's called Waiting for News. And as I was saying, journals like this are so much fun. There's room to grow. This is a great size for travel. You can glue things in. You can paper clip things in. If you decided to, you could glue pockets inside of this. There are just so many ways to add to these. This is another one that I absolutely love. It's called Headspace because it's got skulls on the front and got a tiny little pocket here, a corner pocket on the back, my stamp, and then the binding cord has got a couple of glass beads and a couple of little skull beads. And there's the handmade paper tag. That has a large button for closure and 3 pieces of trim that go around it. This has got pockets on the inside, front and back. It's got just an eclectic mix of textured paper, scrapbook paper. It does have some bizarre images and kind of odd images to fit along with the skull on the front. There's the bird and a piece of paper with the perforated tab. That's kind of a creepy bust. Couple of those. Just different images. And the bird on the inside, that came from an old book about the sea, and it talks about navigational birds, I guess birds that you can watch to help you follow a certain path. You know, there is a verse in the Bible somewhere that talks about the paths in the sea or the lines in the sea. And I read somewhere, I think that inspired the person who started searching for the currents and the straits. So I've always thought that was really, really neat about that Bible verse. And then, you know, the pathways on the sea. There are definite pathways to take. But again, an eclectic mix of pages, some images that are just a bit creepy. There's some distressed paper from my work desk, scrapbook paper, the pocket in the back. And again, this has got a similar number of pages as these last two. The paper tag, each one of these journals has got an individual listing on my blog. I do not want it to feel confusing at all to order. I am trying to stay away from Etsy with these large listings like this because Etsy takes a percentage of everything, including shipping. So they're wanting their sellers to offer free shipping, and yet when we do have to charge for shipping. They take a percentage of that. I still have not figured that out yet, why they're doing that. Their fees are not totally outrageous, and they offer a lot of services because they do keep track of taxes. And so I'm content to use them, but when I can, especially for a release or something like this, I try to go outside of Etsy. These are US only because I cannot afford shipping outside of the United States. I try to include shipping in the prices. I try to keep my prices very reasonable. I, figure in cost of materials, labor, and wear and tear on the machine, things like that, but I do try to keep the cost very low. When you click on a link for a particular journal, for example, Rose number 32, it's going to take you to a post on my blog where you will see detailed information about the journal. There is a Buy Now button that will take you straight to PayPal to purchase. So, it doesn't have the fancy setup as far as I want this one, this one, this one, and put it all together, but they're all free shipping anyway. So, if you want more than one of these, you might have to buy twice, buy one journal and then buy a second one. And I'm sorry, please feel free to communicate with me if you don't like this method. I'm still considering, I had my shop on my own website for a while, but that gets expensive. I didn't mind paying for that. That was about $30 a month for me to have that shop. The downside of that was that shipping was not very cohesive. It was not very user-friendly on my side of things. It was very hard for me to offer free shipping above a certain amount. It was just difficult for that. So I got rid of that because it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I'm not going to ramble anymore. These are listed now. Thank you so much for looking. Thank you for being here. Welcome to all of my new subscribers. There's a lot of information on this channel to help you fill up journals, whether you buy one from me, from somebody else, or make your own. So this is definitely a place to get inspiration for your journals, junk journals, art journals, all journals. All right, I will be back really soon. Bye for now.